Greater Grand Crossing, Chicago, is the kind of neighborhood where people still sit on their porches in the evening, where a mother keeps her front light on not because she's afraid, but because this is home. And home is supposed to mean something. A community that has known struggle, yes. Has known loss, yes. But still holds on block by block, family by family, to the belief that if you work hard enough, stay close enough, love your children loud enough, the walls around you will hold. But on the morning of June 12th, 2026, those walls didn't hold. Latoya Norals had just watched her daughters walk across a graduation stage days earlier. Days. She was 37 years old, a mother of 4, a woman who worked every shift, stretched every dollar, and stayed on her block when leaving would have been easier. She went upstairs to check on her kids. She came back down, and bullets came through the window. Not from an argument, not from a confrontation, not from anything she did or anywhere she went, from a car that rolled up slow in the middle of the night and then drove away into the dark. Latoya was pronounced dead on the floor of her own living room. 3 of her children were in that house when it happened. One of her daughters called her name. No answer came back. No answer came back. And what followed would force an entire city to ask a question it didn't want to answer. How does a woman who did everything right end up dying in the one place she was supposed to be safe? This is the story of Latoya Norals, and how one quiet night on South Eberhart Avenue exposed something far bigger than one family's grief. Okay, so I need you to stop for a second and really hear this, because this isn't just another crime story. This is the story of a mother, a real mother, 4 kids, a job she showed up to every single day, a home she fought to keep, and a night that ripped all of it away. In just a few minutes, gone. Now, here's where we start. June 12th, 2026. It's just before 1 o'clock in the morning. The south side of Chicago is quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear a car engine from 2 streets over. A woman named Latoya Norals, 37 years old, is inside her home. Her home, on the 7600 block of South Eberhart Avenue, Greater Grand Crossing, Chicago. She's not outside. She's not in a dark alley. She's not in anybody's business. She is inside the 4 walls she built her life around. And then a car rolls up, slow, no warning, no argument, no confrontation, nothing. Someone inside that vehicle pointed a weapon at Latoya's house and opened fire. Bullets tore through the window, glass shattered, and just like that, a mother of 4 was fighting for her life on her own living room floor. She didn't make it. Chicago police confirmed it. CBS News reported it. WGN-TV was there. Latoya Norals, 37 years old, was pronounced dead at the scene. Right there. On the same floor her children walked across every morning. And here's what makes this even harder to sit with. 3 of her 4 kids were inside that house when it happened. They heard everything. I mean everything. The glass breaking, the shots, the silence after. And one of her daughters called out her mother's name. No answer came back. No answer came back. So let's go back. Let's understand who Latoya Norals was, because she deserves more than a headline. She deserves the full story. Look, before we talk about what happened that night, we need to talk about who was lost. Because Latoya Norals wasn't famous, she didn't have a platform, she wasn't a public figure, she was something rarer than that. She was a mother who showed up every single day. Latoya grew up on the south side of Chicago, Greater Grand Crossing. If you know Chicago, you know that name. It's the kind of neighborhood where people look out for each other because they have to, block by block, family by family. And Latoya was one of the ones who made the block feel like it meant something. She had 4 children, 2 teenage daughters, and a set of 12-year-old twin boys. 4 kids, and she was raising them, working, providing, showing up on her own. Now, how was she doing that? She worked in the food service department at the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, downtown Chicago, a rehabilitation hospital. She wasn't behind a desk. She was on her feet, every shift, making sure other people were fed while she made sure her own children never went without. That's who Latoya was, right? The kind of person who carries a heavy load and never lets you see her stumble. And here's the part. Here's the part that hits different when you understand the full picture. Just days before she was killed, just days before, Latoya stood in the audience at Chatham Academy Charter High School, and she watched two of her daughters walk across the graduation stage. Cap and gown, two girls she raised, two girls she sacrificed for, two girls who made it. Think about what that must have felt like. Years of early mornings, late nights, bills stretched thin. Homework helped after a full shift. And then, finally, she got to see the payoff. She saw it. She cheered for them. Her girls had done it. And she had made it possible. That graduation photo, a proud mother standing with her two daughters, was taken the week before she died. 1 week, and by the time June 12th arrived, that same woman was gone. Her children had their mother at graduation, and then they didn't have her at all. So let's talk about where Latoya lived, because the address matters. The 7600 block of South Eberhart Avenue. That's not just a location on a map. That is the place Latoya chose to plant her family. The place she stayed. The place she stayed even when it wasn't easy. Neighbors described that block as a typically quiet residential stretch. Families who knew each other. People who looked out for each other. Kids who played outside. Adults who sat on porches. The kind of block that feels safe because the people on it make it feel that way. And Latoya was one of those people. But here's what you need to understand. The neighborhood around her wasn't always that quiet. Greater Grand Crossing sits inside Chicago's Area 1, the South Side Zone, north of 79th Street. And that zone had been under pressure for years. On that very same block, South Eberhart Avenue, another man had been gunned down before, shot multiple times, right in front of a residence. Two gunmen stepped out of a car in broad daylight. Same street, different day. A young woman, just 20 years old, was shot twice in the face, 2 blocks south on Eberhart. She died at the hospital. Same street. More grief. A man found shot on South Stewart Avenue, just a few blocks west. A woman and a man hit by gunfire from a passing car on South Lawrence, 1 block east. And a mass shooting in the same Greater Grand Crossing community that killed 2 women and a 7-year-old boy. A 7-year-old boy. And, critically, injured 2 other children. All of it within the same handful of square miles where Latoya was raising her family. Now, did Latoya know about all of this? Probably. You can't live on a block without knowing your block. But she stayed. She didn't pack up and leave. She didn't move her kids to another part of the city. Maybe she couldn't afford to. Maybe she didn't want to. Maybe that house on Eberhart was the one stable thing she could give her children. And giving it up would mean giving up the only anchor they had. Whatever her reasons, she was there. She chose that block. She chose to make something out of it. And that block became a crime scene on the morning of June 12th, 2026. Okay, now here's what you need to picture. The weeks leading up to June 12th should have been the best stretch of Latoya's year. I mean that, the best stretch. Her daughters had just finished high school. Graduation at Chatham Academy Charter High School had come and gone. Photos were taken. Hugs were shared. Plans for the future were being whispered about. For a woman who had spent years grinding through food service shifts to keep her family afloat, this was the reward. This was the proof that the sacrifice was worth it. Her twin boys, both 12 years old, were still young enough to need her for everything, old enough to understand what their mother was doing for them. And her teenage daughters were stepping into adulthood with their mother right beside them. The family was intact. The family was together, and nobody in that house was expecting anything to go wrong. Now, on the night of June 11th going into June 12th, the house on Eberhart was full. Latoya was home with 3 of her 4 children. One of the twin boys was away that night. Also in the house was a 17-year-old boy, a friend of one of Latoya's daughters, a teenager spending time at a friend's house. The kind of thing that happens in every neighborhood, in every city, every single night. Nothing about that evening was unusual. No parties, no loud music, no one standing outside, no confrontation with anyone. Just a family inside their home, settling in for the night. Latoya had gone upstairs at some point to check on the kids, to do the thing mothers do, make sure everyone is okay before they can rest themselves. Then she came back downstairs, and that is when her life ended. So, it is approximately 12:50 in the morning, June 12th, 2026. The block is quiet. No arguing, no commotion, nothing out of the ordinary. And then, a vehicle pulls up outside the home at the 7600 block of South Eberhart Avenue. Now, how do we know this? Witnesses told family members, not police, family members, that a vehicle drove up to the residence before the shooting started. That's how information moves in neighborhoods like this. People talk to the people they trust, and sometimes that trust doesn't extend to the badge at the door. So the car pulls up. Nobody inside the house sees it coming. Nobody has any reason to look out the window at that hour. There's no warning, no argument, no confrontation, just a car rolling to a position near the house. And then someone inside that vehicle opened fire. The first shots tore through the window on the ground floor. Glass shattered. The sound of gunfire split the silence on that block like a thunderclap. Bullets punched through the window frame and ripped into the house. The 17-year-old boy was hit. In his left hand, he went down. Pain shot through his body, but he was alive. And then it stopped. For a moment, the gunfire paused, and in that gap of silence, whatever hope there was that the worst had already happened, it was about to be destroyed, because a second volley came. More shots, fired from the same position outside, aimed at the same house. And this time, the bullets found Latoya Norals. She was struck multiple times in the body. Multiple gunshot wounds. Not once, not twice. Multiple. The kind of injuries that a hospital cannot undo even if the ambulance arrives in 60 seconds. Latoya collapsed inside her own home. CBS News, Chicago confirmed it. WGN-TV confirmed it. Fox 32 Chicago confirmed it. Pronounced dead at the scene. Her children were in that house. Her daughters, the girls who had just walked across a graduation stage days earlier, were under the same roof when their mother was shot to death. Imagine being one of those kids. Imagine hearing that. The glass breaking, the shots, and then the silence that comes after, which is somehow worse than the noise. Right. So Chicago police responded immediately. Officers arrived at the 7600 block of South Eberhart Avenue after multiple reports of gunshots flooded in. When they got there, they found 2 victims inside the home suffering from gunshot wounds. Latoya Norals, 37 years old, multiple gunshot wounds to the body, pronounced dead on the scene. The 17-year-old boy, gunshot wound to the left hand, transported to the University of Chicago Medical Center, listed in good condition, expected to make a full recovery. Now, area. 2 detectives moved fast. They roped off the entire stretch of South Eberhart. Yellow tape, evidence markers, flashlights cutting through the dark. Detectives spent the early morning hours collecting ballistic evidence from inside and around the property. Shell casings, bullet fragments, the shattered remains of the window, every piece logged, bagged, and tagged. They knocked on doors, woke up neighbors, asked the same questions, over and over. Did you see a car? Did you hear anything before the shots? Do you have cameras? Did anything seem off that night? And here's where it gets complicated. As of the latest reporting, no arrests have been made. No person of interest has been named publicly. No description of the suspect vehicle has been released. No make, no model, no color, no partial plate, nothing. Chicago police also have not confirmed, as CBS News reported, whether Latoya or anyone inside that house was even an intended target. I'm going to say that again. They have not confirmed whether she was the intended target. Which means, right now, this could be one of those cases where a car rolls up, bullets fly, and the people inside the house just happen to be in the path of someone else's rage. And that word keeps coming back. Random. Superintendent Larry Snelling himself said it in an interview reported by the Chicago Tribune that approximately 1/3 of all killings so far in 2026 have occurred indoors, some domestic, others, and I'm quoting him directly here, appeared random. Random. But here's what I want you to sit with. There is nothing random about choosing to fire a weapon into a home where children are sleeping. There is nothing random about pulling the trigger a second time after the first volley. Whoever did this made a choice, and that choice left 4 children without their mother. So now, let's zoom out. Because to really understand what happened to Latoya Norals, you have to understand what was happening to Chicago. Here's the context. In 2025, Chicago recorded its fewest homicides in 60 years. 60 years. That's not a small thing. That is decades of community work, police strategy, anti-violence organizations on the ground, all of it coming together to produce something historic. Mayor Brandon Johnson stood at the South Shore Cultural Center and said, and I'm paraphrasing from reported remarks, that closing out 2025 with the fewest homicides in 60 years was a remarkable testament to collaboration. Communities were breathing easier. For a moment, it looked like things were turning a corner, but 2026 told a different story. According to data reported by the Chicago Tribune and confirmed by multiple outlets, through the first 4 months of 2026, Chicago had already recorded 130 homicides, up from 120 during the same period in 2025. 421 total shootings, 501 shooting victims, a 5% and 9% increase respectively over the same period the year before. April 2026 alone, 32 homicides, a 39% increase over April 2025. And where was the spike concentrated? Right here. Area 1, the south side north of 79th Street, and specifically the Grand Crossing 3rd District. Superintendent Snelling flagged it himself. The Grand Crossing District had seen a particular spike in violence right after the steep drop in 2025. Now, why? How do we explain this? Bob Jackson, CEO of the anti-violence group Ceasefire in Roseland, put it plainly in a statement reported by the Tribune. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, "Since the federal funding cuts, so many organizations have reduced their workers. As the numbers decrease, you have fewer people on the streets doing the work, and then the violence begins to tick back up. Those cuts are real." CBS News, Chicago, reported that Chicago anti-violence groups lost $3.7 million in federal funding after Justice Department grant cuts. $3.7 million. Gone. And Metropolitan Family Services CEO Rick Estrada said, I'm paraphrasing again, "These organizations are doing life-saving work, street outreach, community violence intervention. The cuts will debilitate them and harm their ability to continue that work." So here's what we have. A neighborhood, a district, a community where the anti-violence workers who kept peace on the streets were disappearing one by one because the money ran out. And into that vacuum, violence returned. Latoya Norals lived right in the middle of all of that. She wasn't an activist. She wasn't part of a statistic on purpose. She was just a mother. In a neighborhood where the numbers were creeping back up and nobody with real power seemed to be moving fast enough to stop it. Okay, so where does this case stand right now? Let me be straight with you. As of this reporting, no arrests, no named suspects, no confirmed motive. Area 2 detectives are still actively working the investigation. Now, community leaders near the Chatham boundary have already put out a call. They're asking residents to go back and review their home security footage from the night of June 12th, 2026. Look for anything. A car driving slowly on South Eberhart Avenue. A vehicle that doesn't belong on the block. Headlights at an unusual hour. Movement near the 7600 block that didn't make sense at the time, but makes sense now. Here's the thing about security camera footage. You might not even know what you have until someone with a trained eye looks at it. One camera, on one porch, pointed in the right direction, at 12:50 in the morning. Could be the difference between this case getting solved and this case going cold. Every day that passes without an arrest, the trail gets colder, memories fade, witnesses move, footage gets recorded over, and the person responsible gets more comfortable believing they got away with it. That cannot happen. Now, if you know something, if you saw a car that night, if you heard something, if someone said something to you that now makes sense in a different way, there is a completely anonymous tip line. You don't have to give your name. You don't have to show your face. Just go to cpdtip.com. cpdtip.com. Completely anonymous. And by the way, whoever did this, someone out there knows something. Someone saw that car. Someone heard the plan. Someone knows who was in that vehicle and why they drove to the 7600 block of South Eberhart Avenue in the middle of the night with a loaded weapon. That person might be watching this right now. And if you are, Latoya had 4 children. Think about that. So, we've been through the timeline, the facts, the context, the investigation. Now, I want to end with Latoya, not the victim, not the statistic. Latoya. The woman, the mother. She grew up on Chicago's South Side and never stopped fighting for her corner of it. She worked food service at a rehabilitation hospital on her feet every shift so that her kids could have what they needed. She stretched money that didn't want to stretch. She helped with homework after long days at work. She stayed on a block that other people might have run from, because that block was home, and she wasn't going to let anyone take home away from her children. And then, on June 12th, 2026, someone took her away instead. She leaves behind 2 daughters who just crossed a graduation stage and now have to figure out how to step into adulthood without their mother. She leaves behind 12-year-old twin boys. Boys who still needed her for everything. Boys who now have to grow up with the memory of that night folded into every single day that comes after it. She leaves behind a community, neighbors on South Eberhart Avenue who knew her name, who knew her kids, who knew she was one of the ones holding things together. And she leaves behind a question that this city owes her an answer to. Who did this and why? Because right now, as you're watching this, the person who drove up to that house and fired through that window is still free, still out there, still walking around in the same city where Latoya's children are trying to figure out how to survive what happened to their mother. That is not acceptable. Justice is not a courtesy, it's a debt. And Chicago owes Latoya Norals and her 4 children every ounce of effort that it takes to collect it. Rest in peace, Latoya Norals. Mother of 4, hardworking. Present, loved. Your children deserved more time with you, and you deserve to see everything they were going to become. If you have any information about this case, go to cpdtip.com, leave an anonymous tip, and make sure the last chapter of Latoya's story is not the one that was written on the morning of June 12th. Let's make sure the last chapter is justice.